What's going on, y'all? It's the Home Slice Ascend Hyperion, bringing you more fresh-baked Halo content. One of the things that has long separated Halo from other FPS titles is its approach to weaponry. Unlike games like Call of Duty or Battlefield, Halo enforces a uniform weapon set onto the players. That means that basically, players spawn with the same, if not nearly the same weaponry, and must seek higher powered or varied weaponry from the map during play. This formula is fairly unique to Halo, and while other titles have tried to copy it, none have seen even a fraction of the success that Halo has had with it. These types of weapons are called loadout weapons. All FPS Halo games have them, but as I'm sure you're all aware, these weapons are not created equal. You see, Halo has always had a strong weapon meta. This means that there's always been one key loadout weapon that reigns high above the rest. One that serves as the player's go-to for virtually any engagement, and in some games, it was very much the only loadout weapon even worth using in full play. Where available, this weapon is always the true primary mode of player-on-player combat. And with this on the table, I want to bring out Halo's original #1 death machine, the Magnum. At the inception of what would go on to be one of gaming's biggest and longest running franchises, this handheld monster quickly became the tool of destruction for all players looking to actually contribute to their team's success. Compact in size, quick to handle, fast firing, accurate, and all while sporting one of the lowest time to kills of anything else in the loadout category, the CE Magnum was for many people the true representative face of Halo's gameplay. When you imagine duels of skill in Halo, even down to full team collisions, the Magnum is what comes to mind. But over time and titles, the Magnum would not only fall from greatness, it would wallow in mediocrity. In the two Halo titles following CE, Bungie would nerf the Magnum so hard and so thoroughly it became virtually unrecognizable from both visual and gameplay perspectives, all in the name of installing the BR as the new meta in Halo. And that's what we're going to explore today. I'm going to break down just what happened to the Magnum. We're going to discuss how Bungie failed to properly adapt their own weapon into their new sandbox vision, one of the greatest failures in their progression of Halo. It's time to explore the degradation of the Magnum. Let's get started. Now, something I want to try to do is get everybody on the same frame of reference for this video. What I need is for the viewer to be looking forward through our timeline, starting at CE, not two directions from whichever Halo game they started at. I ran a poll on Twitter to get an idea of where most Halo players started their journey. To my surprise, nearly 45% or so out of a couple thousand said Halo CE, which is great. Unfortunately, many people also mentioned that they were a literal infant when they touched the controller, which happened to be plugged into an Xbox running the main menu of Halo CE. So I just still want to make sure we're all looking forward through time. So for a second, erase everything you know about Halo, and let's take a step back to 2001. The Magnum. I wasn't kidding when I said this baby was the meta. Only 5 shots to the body for a kill, and you can knock it down to 3 if they're all headshots. And did I mention it can fire full auto? Cause yeah, it does that. Did I also mention it has an effective range of the Hubble telescope? Cause yeah, it does. With one of the lowest times to kill of any weapon in the game, and a range far superior than pretty much any other weapon, it's no surprise the Magnum rose to glory. The gun is, to be honest, half a step away from just being broken. But in many ways, that's a symptom of meta. While there are definitely metas that are more mild, the CE Magnum meta ruled with an almighty fist. You'd be hard-pressed in a standard gunfight to beat out a semi-competent player using a Magnum if you're using, I guess, anything else. With its short time to kill, the Magnum could even turn upset on someone who's using a power weapon, especially from behind or out of sight. The other key thing is the lower context for personal health in Halo CE. It's easy to die quickly because the modes by which your personal health are displayed and translated to you aren't as obvious as in later titles. So a 3-shot cleanup on an unsuspecting player in a CE match is always well within reach. But drawbacks aside, the Magnum established and solidified one of the cornerstones of Halo's weapon sandbox, the precision weapon meta. And this is before a time where precision weapon was a term adopted in lingo. The Magnum's ability to be a successful, both close-up and at-range weapon while holding its own against power weapons set the precedent for weapon metas in the rest of Halo. But even though the Magnum established the trend, it would not be allowed to remain at the forefront. In 2004, Halo 2 was released, and the Magnum received what had to be one of the single most vicious nerfs in all of Halo. The mag went from being a 3-shot kill to a 13 headshot kill, also known as an entire mag, and then 1 extra shot. Not only is this a wild backpedal from the CE Magnum, it also yielded one of the worst single performances of a gun in all of Halo. And don't get me started on the body shots, which now require 21 to kill alone. 21 from a gun that once only required 5. I know I mentioned the CE Magnum was borderline broken, and yeah, correction was needed, but man, this is like saying time to land my plane and then nosediving it straight into the Grand Canyon. Imagine being a devout Halo CE player in 2004, finally picking up Halo 2, excited to whip out the mag and deal some damage, only to dump 2 full mags into a guy and have him walk away. I mean, I'd be pretty mad. Now, aside from the damage on the mag needing a little adjustment, there are 2 much larger reasons the Magnum was punished so hard in Halo 2. Stick around because we'll hit those topics later. In 2007, Halo 3 was released, and the Magnum underwent yet another series of major changes. Coming off the back end of the terrible Halo 2 Magnum, the Halo 3 mag made several slight improvements. Instead of 13 headshots to kill, Halo 3 placed it at 5, with a full mag of 8 being enough to kill in all body shots. These stats, while lower in count, are actually still pretty bad, especially since the Halo 3 Magnum fires really slow. Slower than most weapons in the game, and definitely the slowest of any other Magnum iteration. Not to mention, a full mag dump for a body shot kill is pretty unforgiving. How often do you hit every single shot you fire at a guy? Not often. In exchange for slower shot time, the H3 mag is actually very accurate, more akin to the CE mag, but in Halo 3's weird, low-context airsoft projectile sandbox, actually landing shots with the mag felt like an act of divine faith rather than a simple gunfight. All in all, the Halo 3 Magnum is fairly reasonable in correction to the awful changes made in Halo 2, but to be honest, that's if you're just looking at the Magnum alone. They don't really hold up when put against other weapons in the sandbox. The BR is of course back in the crown of the meta. The mag still can't fire when scoped in. The time to kill of other weapons trounces the mag just as before. Even when dual-wielded, the mags are just overwhelmed by the sheer firepower and aggression of other weapons. So yet again, the Magnum was once Halo's greatest powerhouse. It's forced to take a backseat in the sandbox. It struggles and fails to prove to be competent enough to use in an average fight. So, faithful viewer, here we are. Counting Halo 3's lifespan into reach, we have 9 years of Magnum history laid out in front of us. We've observed not only the fact that the Magnum was spiked into the dirt by Bungie, but we've seen how. And here, I want to really discuss how the decline of the Magnum played out and its effects. If you've enjoyed the video so far, be sure to click that subscribe button. A big reason I wanted us to work upward from Halo CE is because how we view the Magnum as a weapon is very important. When we start in CE, we observe the mag as a cornerstone weapon, one with high utility, validity, and often our direct counterpart for most fights. But if you're observing from Halo 2 or Halo 3 outward, you most likely consider the mag a non-weapon. I mean, really think about it. How often do you try to use or obtain the Magnum in these games? Seldom, I'd imagine. Maybe if you're low on one gun and the guy in front of you just died and dropped his, but do you ever feel like you're going to confidently challenge another player when using the mag in these games? No. So many other guns overpower and outmaneuver the mags. They're wayside options. Last-ditch fillers for when you've got nothing else in your pocket. That is a huge disparity. Can you think of any other weapon in all of Halo that has had such a range of performance? No, because there are none. That's because weapons just don't enter and exit the meta in Halo. The Magnum is the only weapon to ever do it. It's a black sheep in the franchise's 20-year history. And it didn't just exit meta, it was suplexed from the tallest meta mountain there is. That's the thing. Bungie made what I consider zero attempt at preserving the functionality and approach of this CE Magnum. They went for a full-on redesign. But why? Well, there's two main culprits. The first was the introduction of dual wielding. In Halo 2, Bungie introduced dual wielding because the guys in marketing said it'd be cool if Master Chief had two gun, cause this two game. Dual wielding was one of the worst things that has ever happened to the Halo sandbox. And if you have questions about why, stay tuned to the channel, cause I'll be explaining that in due time. Basically, for the sake of this video, let's focus on the balancing issues. Dual wielding is not about giving players twice as much power. It's about giving them the two halves of the power they would have had if dual wielding didn't exist. This wreaked havoc on the Magnum's place in the sandbox. In CE, it was a tried and true loadout weapon. In Halo 2, the common loadout set was BR and SMG, and thus the mag was reduced in validity, and to attempt to balance it, it suffered massive damage reduction since it was dual wieldable. Not only this, but the ability for the Magnum to fire while scoped in was stripped away, and its bullet spread was made far more dramatic, nuking its potential for being a ranged weapon. One might say, okay Ascend, well just dual wield then stupid, that's what Bungo wanted. Okay, well let's do that. It takes 21 shots with the mag to drop a guy, body shots. Combined, the two mags give you a maximum capacity of 24 shots, meaning you still need to dump a full mag from each hand into the guy, and that's if you even hit every single shot, no mistakes. This is a major downgrade from the CE version and a reckless nerf on what was once a cornerstone weapon. The other key culprit is the inception of the BR. In many ways, it's almost a betrayal. We talked about how the Magnum basically invented the precision weapon meta. It outlined nearly all the most core elements that made up the weapon type and its influence on the Halo playstyle. So going into Halo 2, Bungie decided that the corrections of the meta weren't to be applied to the Magnum, but were rather better suited for a brand new weapon. If we take a step back and observe the Bungie Halo games, it's obvious. Bungie struggled immensely with weapon balancing. Either by design or by folly, they just could not create sandboxes that supported mild or varied metas. The best it ever got was Halo 3, and even then the BR meta was very, very strong. It always had to be one rules over all. In Halo 2, the BR was this weapon, and rather than seek a solid home for the Magnum, it was banished to the lowest tiers of weapon validity. Even moving into Halo 3, the Magnum was plagued by these two issues yet again. Even with the damage increase in Halo 3, the shot time and strange, almost disappearing projectiles made using it subpar compared to other options. This is what makes the change in power of the Magnum so obvious and dramatic. It didn't just receive a personal nerf, but a tandem nerf from the sandbox changes as well. It's an unfortunate situation. These things are interesting to observe because in many ways they don't get discussed this way, or at least in this order, and that order of deterioration is important. For people who joined in on the franchise in H2 or H3, it's hard to accept the Magnum as a viable meta member. The roots of failure were sown so deeply in the Magnum for 6 years. Many players either didn't experience the Magnum in CE at its peak, or weren't even old enough to actually understand what the changes that assaulted it meant. What's more, the Magnum was basically replaced. There wasn't a void in the sandbox to fill to call player attention to, kinda like if the sniper or AR disappeared overnight. The BR occupied what was once the Magnum slot, and since the BR turned out to be a hit in its own right, there was no real palpable call for reversal. So here sits the Magnum, usurped from its throne, cast aside as what really amounts to an afterthought in the weapons sandbox. Nearly 9 years after its introduction, things are looking bleak for the once king of guns. But things would soon change for the Mag. After being left to collect dust for so long, the Magnum was unknowingly on the cusp of a renaissance. And in the next video, we'll discuss the epic revival of Halo's original meta. That's it for this video. Be sure to catch the next one, like and subscribe, drop your comments about the Magnum and its progression below. Until next time, I'll catch you guys later.